Very nice young player who's been very happy with a 66 Super Reverb I did for him about 2 years ago. I guess about a year and a half, 2 years ago. I restored a 66 Super Reverb for him. Got in touch with me and said he loves the Super, but he needs something a little bit smaller, a little less loud for certain gigs. And I said, well, if you love your Super, check out the Deluxe Reverb and check out the Vibrolux Reverb. Play them each and see what you think. The Vibrolux is kind of sort of half of a Super Reverb. It's got a little bit earlier breakup. And the Deluxe Reverb is also very similar to a Super Reverb in a lot of respects, but it does have a 1x12, so you have a different low-end response. And he brought in this 1980 Vibrolux Reverb, one of the last of the classic years. Does have a few changes, a few oddities inside. We'll take a look at those. It's got a pull for volume boost circuit, which we may disable and make this like a 60s. We may just make sure that it's working, and just if it doesn't sound great when you do that, don't do that. I can't let you hear the before because as it arrived, it had had a shipping boo-boo, and shipping boo-boos are no fun. So let's take this out of the cab and see what else may or may not have happened to it in shipping, and see what the condition of this amp is inside, and check the speakers and all that fun stuff, and get this thing ready for gigging. All right, so it's got, if not original, a period correct Zenith 5U4GB. Hopefully that's still good. I'm gonna go ahead and take it out and put it to the side so nothing bangs into it while I take this apart. The post 73 glued and dadoed baffle seems to be in good shape. That's great. I hate it when the thing's got big chunks missing out of it because then you have a big expensive repair. The speaker terminals appear to be in good shape. That's not always the case. Someone's been a little bit overzealous with some cable ties. That's probably for the best. Let me undo some things here. We'll see if the foot switch still works. These white wires, the insulation on those likes to break. Not the best design. Classic late 70s ugly plastic RCA stuff. But they tend to work, or they don't. There's not much middle ground there. No big deal either way. And I have learned to take the time to put all the nuts back on these things and put them back in the back of the cabinet so they cannot get either lost or separated from the amp they originally belonged to. Because at any given point, I can have 5 to 10 to 15 Fenders with the same strap spacing, so that they can be interchangeable if you let them interchange. And this little bit of hardware that holds the power cable in place. If there's any question about replacing the power cable, I'll go ahead and put that back in the side of the cabinet as well, so it does not go a-wandering. And this era has got this red plastic plug. It's very common for the insulation to pull out and just be bare wires exposed there. I'm tugging on it, and this one seems okay, so yay. All right, let's slide this bad boy out. All right, the first thing I notice is the output transformer is a little bit loose. Let's see if we can do anything about that. So choke and reverb are okay. Let's check under the doghouse. As I've shown, I always put these back in manually, but it's okay to take them out with a power tool at low speed and low torque. All right, let's see what wonders await. Okay, promising. As you can see, it's got F&Ts. Someone has installed F&Ts. They don't have any real support beneath them, and there's a lot of ugliness in the leads, but that can all be addressed. I can probably use these caps and just reinstall them a little bit more nicely. And they do have the original dropping resistors. First thing I want to do is just check DC voltage, see if there's anything waiting in here for us. There is not. And I often replace these here in the power supply, these old resistors. The 2.2K measures 2.4K, and the 10K measures 11.3. So they're still within spec, but they do drift over time, which is one of the reasons I often replace these. But this is a good starting point. Let's look at the insides. All right, looking around inside, the first thing that came to my mind is, as far as uh-ohs go, there's a little snippet of solder or wire here resting on this terminal of the bias pot, and in such a way that it could easily contact the shell of this bias pot, which would give you a short on the raw bias supply, and the output tubes would have no bias, and therefore bad things could happen. Let's see if I can get this out of the way. It's hard to do this with a camera here. Zooming out for an overview, everything's pretty much stock with the exception of the changed out electrolytics throughout. These sprigs here are from 2013, so they're, might be time to replace them. It's up to the owner. If they're working right, I'll test them later. In this area, you can see they have that added disc cap from each grid to ground, so the amp doesn't oscillate. The reason the amps in this era intended to oscillate is because of all the spaghetti wiring. You'll see a lot more of that. If we clean up the lead dress, de-spaghetti this thing, these caps won't be necessary. And it has the original screen grid resistors, which I'll measure in a bit. It's got the death cap over here rather than on the ground switch in this era. That's just a matter of disconnecting this white wire at each end. Got the classic connections here for grounds made to the transformer mounting bolts. Those are not always very reliable. I often change those out. I've shown that again and again. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but that horse just keeps on dying, and amp after amp. And I'll have to change the wiring on the AC so that the hot is fused, then switched, as opposed to having the fuse on the neutral and the switch on the hot, the way Fender was doing it in this time. You can see how heavy the wax on the board is in this period. It's not uncommon for the DC leakage. We'll check that later in the video. Leakage in the wax itself, because as the amp is used, the wax gets warm, the wax gets soft, dirt and smoke particles in the air. This was from 1980. All these things would get embedded in the wax. The amp is turned off, the wax cools, it hardens, all that stuff is trapped. You repeat that again and again, and a lot of stuff can get built up in that wax until the wax itself becomes conductive. Now, this amp is really clean for this period, so it may not be an issue here. We'll find out. What is an issue, and it's a bit surprising, is this sprig here from 2017. All the 25 microfarad cathode bypass caps in the amp are from 2017. This one is spewing its guts. It's got some electrolyte coming out here, and the entire vent has bulged. So that cap, at the very least, needs to be changed. I often change that to a 4.7 microfarad anyway. So it's possible we could leave all the others. We'll see what the wax situation is like. I don't want to volunteer the owner for work that's purely, just so that I was the one to change out the thing. But if this one failed, how prone are the other ones to failing? These things usually don't fail, and they certainly don't usually fail in a period of 8 years, but this one certainly has, and sprigs are not what they used to be. You can see here they implemented the factory deticking solution. They've got this 10 nanofarad cap across the roach. That's something I often do in older amps that did not have this from the factory. Doesn't change the behavior of the tremolo circuit, just gets rid of that ticking. Like I said, a lot of excess spaghetti in these, a lot of wax, and each one of these cathode bypass caps from 2017 is a potential problem, though they should not be, but just life. Here, this is an unbypassed reverb driver cathode here. Instead of the 2.2K bypass with a 25 microfarad that Fender did in the AB763 schematic, they just have an unbypassed unbypassed resistor here, often 470 ohms, 680 ohms, or 820 ohms. On the theory that, hey, that'll give the same amount of gain, you don't have to use a cap. Well, the trouble is that drives the tube really hard. 12AT7s tend to fail, the tube runs hotter, and oftentimes this resistor burns. This one seems okay, but I often change that back to the 63 schematic. There's some redundant ground connections, like this is a chassis here, and the other end of this little twisty wire is also going to ground. In that case, it doesn't really matter. It's just making like a ground tunnel. But there are places where they have wires double-ended that are being used as a full shield, and you want to telescope that. So a lot of the redundant grounding I'll clean up. It's almost theoretical, but cumulatively it makes a difference. This switch here is the pull boost, and that boost bypasses the reverb stage in such a way that the reverb circuit becomes an extra gain stage. It's kind of what led to Boogie, and I know that Paul Rivera did similar things. The issue is it never tends to sound very good, at least as Fender did it. Maybe the later Rivera stuff did. I know that some similarly modded Riveras were used a lot in the LA studios in the early and mid 80s. And certainly Boogie has done well with that concept, well for them at least. But this Fender implementation kind of sucks. And this push-pull 1 meg pot kind of sucks. It's not a very good volume pot as far as the taper goes compared to what these amps had before the brilliant push-pull thing. So I'll talk to the owner, see if he wants me to put in a standard 30% taper 1 meg and just undo all this stuff. So it's just a straight Vibrolux reverb. That's what I would do if it were my amp, but it is not my amp. Well, I put the rectifier tube back in place, and I've got it on my light bulb limiter, and I'm going to power it on. And we're going to see what kind of voltages may be present on the wax board, any leakage. So I've got my meter set to DC. I've got the meter set so you can see it. And I've got the black lead at chassis, so I just move this red one around and see what we see. All right, so here we got 305 volts. At the treble cap, we have 19 millivolts. Mids cap, 4 at the bass cap. Here at the output of the normal channel, we've got 20 millivolts. This is all looking pretty good right now for a wax board. This is fantastic. 3 for the bass there. 3 for the mids, 18 for the treble. Here's the junction that often has the worst. I think the owner's getting very lucky. We've got 30 something millivolts worst case, settling down to 17 millivolts. That is often in the 10s and higher. The other end of that, just make sure I'm not getting sometimes when you're trying to measure this stuff, there's a little bit of wax between your probe and the actual solder joint. So let's call that 23 typically. That's really good. And over here at the phase inverter input, this is all looking really good. And here at the bias, make sure both sides are nominally balanced. 38.23, 38.26. There's a bias balance pot there, but that initial test tells me that there's probably nothing wrong as far as leakage in the board or as far as either of these caps being leaky, because if that were the case, you'd have more of a voltage disparity on either side of these. Then the bias balance pot really introduces in normal usage. It's set pretty balanced already. So right now, the only real problem I'm seeing in here is this cathode bypass cap, which is blown its guts, and the fact that it came with some shattered 6L6s. So I will talk to the owner, and what I want to do at this point is replace at least this cap. Talk to him about whether to do anything about the push-pull boost. I want to clean up some of the spaghetti wiring, just shorten some of the lengths and improve the lead dress. That'd be a good use of money. Take out the depth cap, rewire the AC. I'd like to do the chassis grounds a little bit better, though these seem to be okay, which is not something I can say about all amps from this period. And I have no problem with keeping the bias balance circuit, though if I need to, I can replace this one resistor here with a resistor in series with the trim pot and give us not just bias balance, but also give us the ability to change the bias overall. Now, if you'd like me to do a full recap just for peace of mind, I will, but that's totally optional. So, I'm not trying to upsell. Some owners just want to have everything done at once that could possibly ever be needed, and some owners want to have done the bare minimum while maintaining a quality level. And I'm fine with either approach. I do look forward to getting to hear this. So hopefully next time you see this amp, you'll also be hearing this amp. Thanks for watching.